Give me to talk about strides, I would talk about it. So, I'm Dr. Gail Everett. I have a PhD in special education, and I have taught on the university level for 14 years. But my real love is to be right in there with it, with the kids and their parents. So when health issues kind of precluded me working full-time on the university level, what I did was my mother had suggested, well, you know, we've done all this tutoring for all these years. Why don't you convert that into a nonprofit and work with all these kids that come from families that really can't afford the help? So we started Strides back in 2005, and it is a 501c3, and we use what's called potentials. That's not a method that I made myself, but it's been around for about 40 years. What we do is we work with kids ages 7 to 20 who are behind in a basic skill like reading or math. Now there are lots of nonprofits and other types of organizations, businesses and so forth here in Greenville who will be happy to work with the school-age child. We do ages 7 to 20. In like a homework club, or you know, to help them with their homework so they can get it and their grades will come up. But the kids that we work with, instead, our focus is our initial testing that we do. It takes about an hour, and I'm just testing for instance, a reading level. And so we have a criterion test we give. I also give the wide range achievement test. And I find out what that child's reading level is. And then and currently we have 15 paid tutors, instructors, and then we are working with 2 after-school centers where we send an expert out to manage their volunteers. And I've also been on the site with those 2 locations. Also, working with the volunteers to see if it's possible to get them using the materials in a way that can move these kids up. What we're looking at is not helping them pass the grade this year. We're looking at bringing up basic reading and math skills. Now, I love things like what Terry's doing, but a lot of the kids are going to wind up on needing some of your kind of help, Terry, unless we get those reading and math skills up when they're in the lower grade levels. And so that's a lot of what we are doing at Strides. We currently have about 80 students that we're working with. They're all one-on-one. They come 2 days a week, an hour each time. I write a specific, the schools would call it an IEP, but for us it's just we call it CHIT. It's a little tiny piece of paper that says, okay, take the potentials materials, start here and work through. Now, if a child, when they come in to me initially, is reading at least 2nd grade or above, our normal growth rate is 1 grade level for every 4 to 6 weeks. So a few years ago, somebody brought me a 9th grader that was reading on 1st grade level. We've worked with him 2 hours a week. And in 9 months, we had him reading on high school level. Now, this was a child with speech problems, and he talked very, very slow, and he still read very, very slow. I was amazed. I sat with him one time, and we pulled out his science book, and he's only reading 8 words a minute, but he's understanding everything he reads. So that's incredibly slow. And in that case, there is no way to make him read faster, but he finished high school. And that was the goal of his parents, that they really wanted him to do. Most of our students are only with us 3 to 6 months, and then they, you know, we might see them in 3 or 4 or 5 years. Usually they come back to work on math. But reading is what we work on mostly.
And you may be getting into this. How do students get into your program?
Well, we don't do any advertising because word of mouth is enough to bring them to us. Last time we checked, about 40% are coming through professionals, And actually, inside this building, we get a lot of references, like from Clarity and so forth. The schools will not allow us to leave our brochures there. They are not open to the idea of anybody leaving their brochures at the schools, but individual teachers will make recommendations. But almost all of it is word of mouth.
What's the cost of the program?
The cost of the program, it's $55 an hour, but we have a scholarship program that about 70% of our students are on at any given time. So most of our students are taking advantage of that scholarship program. And the same streams of revenue that Terry was showing are the kinds of people that we're depending on to help us scan source and Terracon and taking advantage of grants, United Way funds and so forth. Wherever we can find money, we plug that in. People have asked us, why don't you depend on a volunteer group? And the work we've done recently with the after-school groups has shown us exactly why we can't depend on a volunteer group. We want to know that that person is our employee and they're going to be there every time for that child. And it's worked. So we are a faith-based organization, so everyone who is employed by us signs our statement of faith, but our kids come from every kind of family that you could imagine. Most of them are the lower level kids in first, second, third grade, the elementary grades. But we're happy to take high schoolers. And I would love it if someday we could plug into some kind of a program where we catch those kids. There's a gap here where you've got kids who come out of high school. They're maybe drop out at 16 or 17 or something. And they've got a few years there. Or if we could catch them at their second or third grade reading level, we could push them up high enough so they could get into your GED programs. Because we don't really want to do GED. Once in a while we wind up doing GED. But what we'd really like, we're here if anyone wants to use us in that way, is to push those kids up to a high enough level. Most of the GED programs here in Greenville won't take them unless they're functioning on a 9th grade level. And that's way higher than most of your kids in special ed. About 82% of the kids who have special ed as they go into high school never receive a high school diploma. So a lot of them drop out and some of them get the certificate, which they do not find especially useful. By the way, you're welcome to put your hand up for questions at any time that you like. Yes?
Hey, you guys, would you tutor somebody who's being homeschooled?
Oh yes, we have homeschoolers. In fact, at 12 o'clock, I just finished homeschooling a wonderful young man who is a 4th grader, and their family has been through a very traumatic situation recently, and so he's already come up, he's about ready to move into the 2nd grade book, and we've only had him for 6 lessons. So yes, we love homeschoolers. Kids from private school. We have one little boy that can't go to school right now because he was badly burned on his legs from gasoline fire, and his mama said, no, don't go over there. And he ran ahead. He's only 6. And he's been back and forth to the Augusta Burn Center, and we actually send one of our tutors goes out to his home. And he's already, while he's been at home, has come up 3 grade levels, which has been astonishing to me, because with all that, I wouldn't think he would, but he's doing great. So, you know, we are, the one hallmark of our program is that if you'll just let us teach reading, we'll be as flexible as we need to in any of the other circumstances that we have to fit into. We'd like to get in 2 hours a week, but when we worked with the Frazee Center and with Legacy Charter School, 2 different years we were working with them, we found that we had to cut it up into like a half-an-hour segments or 45-minute segments, and we found that the kids still made the progress. And speaking of Legacy, that is the one thing that's holding us back, and that is kids that speak Spanish, or I suppose any other language too. But we are having, that is slowing our production rate, because we really, really like to see a grade level for every 10 to 15 hours. And we are not seeing that with a lot of our Hispanic students. But, I mean, that doesn't stop us from trying. 40% of our students right now speak Spanish at home. And one speaks Russian. So, we have locations in Boiling Springs, Fountain Inn, Easley, Simpsonville. No, it's Malden. They're just moving to Malden. The main office is in Cherrydale, and then we have our two after-school locations that we're working with, the Sterling Center and Neighborhood Focus. And my desire is to bring up every kid's reading level in Greenville County. But if you think about it, I mean, if you look on the pages that the school district publishes on the web, 50% of these kids between grades 3 and 8 do not read or do their math on grade level. Is anybody scared about that? Is anybody thinking about what's going to happen in 10 years, 15 years when these kids hit the job market and can't do anything because they can't read? Now, most of us will assume, oh, well, somehow the computer or the phone or something will make it possible for them to do it. But what we're finding is that if you don't read, you can't really use those devices. And so I'm very worried about it, not just from that perspective. I mean, from my perspective, it's the little boy that I sat across from today. I know how he feels about himself when he can't read. I know his older brother, who's also moving ahead very, very quickly. I know that he feels the same way. He said, they're making me do a cold read. I have to read in front of people, you know, and I can't do it. Which, by the way, 2 weeks ago, we said to the mom, you know, you said his eyes haven't been checked. We really would like him to have his eyes checked. They checked his eyes, and sure enough, they found that he is farsighted. And so we are very excited next week to see what's going to happen when he comes in with glasses on. Yes?
So you have people that go to homes and then, or you've got...
Not usually,
Okay,
but they
so you've got
usually,
locations
yeah,
that...
they usually come to these locations that we have. The problem is now, Ruth is able to go to that home in the evening. And she's a single lady and she doesn't mind giving up an evening to go and do that. But if we have to send someone out, that means they spend the whole afternoon traveling,
Right.
teaching, and coming back. I mean, I'm sure you see it when you go to do your job coaching, how much
Oh, yeah.
that absorbs it up. Just think if you could get them all to job coach in a central location where you could be. I mean,
Yeah, well, what I
It
do
wouldn't
is
work that
in
way.
the workplace, but that's where something like
Yeah.
the Life Skills Center would be.
yes, yes.
But where are the locations where they can take them?
Boiling Springs, and we've had an offer of Spartanburg, as soon as I can get somebody to do that location. Fountain Inn, Malden, which we hope soon will be moving to the Maravan Center. Let's see, Cherrydale Point.
Cherrydale?
Yes, near Cherrydale. Easley, we meet at the library. And then we have our two afternoon ones at the after-school centers. Yes.
Just a spin-off of what Harry was offering. My wife was a first grade school teacher. She has health issues, but she loves to read and loves to teach. On that same frequency, if that there are children within a certain area that's close to our home, and I am just speaking on the edge right now, could come to our house and she could spend, say, a half hour with them, is that of any consideration?
Yes, because we have had them in the homes recently. I mean, in the past. Our main office is in Mrs. Arney's home. She lives upstairs and gives her whole downstairs to her. In Boiling Springs, we're at the Family Resource Center, Upstate Family Resource Center. We're meeting in libraries in Easley and in Malden. Libraries. The library in Easley works great, but the one in Malden, the Greenville libraries are kind of fussy sometimes about their tutoring rooms, you know. So that's why we're at church is letting us move to the Maravan Center. So in Fountain Inn, we're at the Presbyterian Church. The nice thing is that the important thing about what we do are our materials and our people. And if the location is, as long as it's quiet there, and we can do one-on-one with them, we're not otherwise concerned about it. We work with, we've had many children brought to us with, most of our kids have learning disabilities or attention deficit, but many kids with autism, kids with physical disabilities, the mental disabilities. We've worked with IQs as low as 50 or so. It takes much longer, and a realistic outlook would be that we could get them reading up to 4th grade level, but they'll only understand up to 2nd grade level. An example would be a young man we did that with a few years ago who had never noticed at age 17 that there were lines down the roads. You know, that the roads have lines on them. So when we read a story about the lines on the road, it didn't make any sense to him because he'd never even noticed that. So it's very, that's not probably long-term, but it's very useful for a student even to read at 2nd grade level as they go into adulthood. 2nd grade is better than not reading at all. And we've had some in their teens that come to us that don't read at all, and we only get them up to 2nd grade, and all of a sudden they kind of move from being this little child vision of themselves, they move into, well, actually I'm a grown-up. I'm an adult, and it can do that with a family and help them move up in that level. Any other questions that anyone would have? We're very flexible. We're willing to work with anyone's situation. So if you know of people who have situations where they're going to need something special, occasionally we have someone that can go to a home. If it was a homeschooler, it would be easier for us to do that because we could come during the day when we're not busy. Or if you know of people who might be interested in working with us, we're always open to new people and new situations. What I've seen happen over the years is if the Lord gives me a new place to work at, He gives me somebody to work there and kids to come. They all seem to come together at the same time. So that's exciting to us. Yes?
I took a special ed class back at the University of Iowa about 45 years ago. And the instructor underscored that the children learn more than what is taught. You'll be surprised what they can absorb, but you think they don't absorb it, but they do, yes. And I worked in the Council Bluffs public school system also, and the head of the department, said, and this may sound awful, he said, you cannot just take them out and shoot them. They are individuals, they're persons, they are of value. Yes.
And we need to realize that. The problem is we in Greenville County move towards 50% of our students are going to be left out. How are they going to get through high school? And do not, if you know anyone who's depending on the grade cards, do not depend on those. We are having more and more parents who are coming into us and are saying, she is getting all A's and B's on her report card, but I know she can't read. And when I give a simple evaluation, she's reading a grade and a half low. Now, how can she get A's and B's in 3rd grade or 4th grade and not even be able to read on that level? So I don't know what to do about that. A lot of the parents are not buying it. They're looking at the report cards and they're saying, no, I can tell something's wrong. Yes, sir.
If I may just add another clause. When I was either a sophomore or junior in college, they did a reading test on me. And I had a 7th grade reading level. But persistence, I graduated.
Yeah. And I completely agree. But you probably wouldn't have been able to do it with a 4th grade reading level. And that is generally what we're finding is that these kids that are moved into self-contained classrooms, many of them who have perfectly average IQs, but have a learning disability in the area of reading. Almost none of them are reading above 4th grade level. In my opinion, if you can read 5th or 6th grade level, you can probably make it through life. That's not my ideal for you, but you know, I'd like it to be higher, but you can make it. But 4th grade is not going to get it. So, but I really, really appreciate your having me today. And next time I'll bring my millennial and we can have some fancy PowerPoint or something.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for